Alright everyone, welcome to the first multiplayer video on the channel. Obviously, we'll be doing 3 introduction races in today's video with the City TCR and hopping straight into it, into practice. First lap, did a 110.8, pretty bad. Second lap, 110.2, a little improvement. On the third lap, we ended up doing it 110.0, and on the final lap, we encounter a typical Forza player. We're up 4/10 of a second, and Beastly Panda 242 decides to not only turn into me, but he then proceeds to take his own life. Anyways, with that out of the way, head into the intermission period, where not only did I not qualify highly, but I ended up making quite a huge mistake, where I decided to base my fuel amount and tire compound on the qualifying amount of laps instead of the actual race laps, which, as you can imagine, didn't really finish too well for me. But anyways, hopping into the race, starting near the back, unfortunately.
Lights out and away we go!
Now, to be completely honest, kinda expected to see some carnage going to turn 1, and as you can see, surprisingly no fatalities for now. Anyways, heading into turn 2, just trying to avoid collisions for my driver's rating. And as you can see, there's a lot of contacts, a lot of bumping. Heading into turn 3, I bump into some guy, but thankfully I got no penalty. And Alexander here just decides to turn into me. And heading into the corkscrew, we witness our first death of the race. And as you can see, just trying to make my way through the pack, heading up into P7 after not a very great race line through there. And heading, low bump by Mr. Balmack. And heading into the last turn, it seemed that Alexander was kind of done with the race and just decides to turn into me. Thankfully didn't do anything. Anyways, as we move on, heading into lap 2 in P6 with about a 6-second gap to P1. Going into turn 1 pretty smoothly, and as we're heading to turn 2, someone, and we got a nice little overtake into P4, and as you can see, P3 and P2 just bump into each other, and we move up to P3 somehow after only 1.5 laps. Now heading into the corkscrew, chasing down Tobe here, and I guess he was just scared of me, so he decides to just move away, which just gave me a free position. And from here on out, it was basically a hunt for P1. Now, unfortunately, as you guys saw in the beginning, I didn't really choose a proper fuel amount, and as you can see, by the end of lap 2, the gap was about 4 seconds. And heading to the end of lap 3, the gap was down to about 2.2 seconds. And unfortunately, this is when we have to pit. And as you can imagine, this was obviously my demise of this race. And as we exit the pits, we now have about a 24-second gap to P1 and about a 5.5 second to the player in front of us. And unfortunately, nothing really happened. Moved up to P6, and on final lap, we actually had a very stressful moment. And thankfully, we just barely missed us. And we end up in P4, heading to last turn. P3 makes a mistake, and obviously doesn't. So in the end, P4 after quite a disastrous mistake on our end at the beginning. So overall, it's not too bad. Not too mad about it. Anyways, moving on to race 2, which brings us to Grand Oak Raceway, where it was a completely different story from race 1. As you'll see as we head into practice, pretty sure I did like maybe 1 or 2 laps of practice, and then I jumped straight into qualifying. But yeah, I did a 59.6 in practice, and yeah, as I said, jumped straight into qualifying. And in qualifying, did pretty decently. Ended up qualifying on pole position, as you'll see. First lap did a 59.3, nothing too crazy. And on the second lap, did a 58.9, which was pretty solid. And that was pretty much it. So as you can see, pole position, and we make the correct decision this time by choosing our fuel amount based on a feature race, not the qualifying. Now, as we hop into the race, starting on pole position, should be pretty fun, or at least I thought it would be. But as you'll see, as we get off the line, heading into turn 1, I decided to let go of the throttle for some reason, which was kind of a stupid mistake. But heading into turn 2, you'll see that the gap somehow went from 0.5 seconds to about a whole second entering turn 3. And unfortunately, that was pretty much the story of this race. I mean, just as you can see at the end of lap 1, 1.5 second gap. Skipping to lap 5, 3-second gap. And in the end, we finished with nearly a 7-second gap to P2. And we bring home the victory. So, you know, it was a pretty dominant performance altogether. Ended up with only the 3rd fastest lap somehow. But yeah, we'll take it. And we get a nice little cutscene for the podium drivers. And as you'll see, we ended up P1. So, pretty happy with the result of that race. It was quite fun for the first few turns. And the last race brings us to Hakone, and honestly this is probably one of my worst tracks in the entire game, simply because my pace isn't on par with the other tracks. And as you can see, hopping into practice, I think I did maybe 1 or 2 laps at most. Yeah, I think probably 2. And in the end, did a 107.7 as my best lap, which was the best in practice. And heading straight into qualifying afterwards. Wasn't great, that's for sure. Ended up doing a 108.0, as you will see. And that was good enough for P3. Which is honestly surprising, because that's really not a great lap. But anyways, heading into the intermission. And guess what? I made the same mistake as race 1 somehow. Anyways, as you can imagine, that was a complete waste of a P3 in qualifying. And as we get off the line, heading into turn 1, you know, try to avoid as much contact as possible, well, unnecessary contact. And as you can see, trying not to bump into a cute panda right about here, slow me down a little bit. And after this, honestly, first lap comes to an end, and I just go straight into the pits. And at this point, like, the race is pretty much over. I just gave up. And not only did I give up, but I actually made a mistake which made it even worse, and I underfueled, as you can see. So at the end of the race, no, first of all, let's leave the pits. I have a 22-second gap to P10 and a 28-second gap to P1. So you can imagine that there's no coming back from that within 6 laps. And yeah, at the end of the race, literally crawling to the finish line with no fuel left. As you can see, the speedo just slowly but surely decreasing. And yeah, ended with a 13-second gap to P10 or P9. And there you go, finish P10.
Nicely done. P10.
Anyways, hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe for more. And the next 2 videos are great races that I had in Formula Mazda and in the touring car series. So stay tuned for that. Till next time.